For more on social media, markets, and politics, we're joined by Aram Sinreich. He's professor and chair of the Communication Studies Division at American University School of Communication with a focus on law, technology, and culture. Welcome so much to the show. Look, obviously there's a difference between freedom of speech and freedom of reach. These are private companies with no requirement to amplify some of these voices, but there are concerns. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel called Trump's Twitter eviction problematic, and there are obviously concerns here as well in the U.S. But can you paint a picture for us of what's happening, the legal concern, and also the potential business consequences of it?
Sure. So we've got the Section 230 law that essentially indemnifies social media platforms for contributory liability for any of the nasty things that people say or do on them, but that presumes that they're basically undertaking a duty of care not to rip down society in the quest for profit. And the dirty little secret, I think, of social media for the past 10 years has been that a lot of that upside, a lot of that profit has come precisely from weaponizing or from monetizing hatred and anger. And it's very difficult to reform the social media companies and to change their business models without throwing out a lot of the baby with the bathwater.
Critics said that the social media companies are opportunists. They did this minutes after the vote was certified for Joe Biden, not Donald Trump, and Democrats won control of the Senate, giving them control of all three bodies. The counter to that is so what? What are the business consequences of it? So far, media stocks have fallen over the past week. Do you expect that to continue, and how far do you expect them to fall?
Well, if uncertainty undermines the value of these companies, then yeah, it's going to continue to slide because certainty is a long way off. I mean, even aside from the kind of political uncertainties that we face right now, there's not a clear consensus about what kind of social media laws and policies the Biden administration and the Democratic-controlled Senate and House are going to consider in his first term. If they decide, for instance, that social media companies need to be held more accountable for the speech that takes place on their platforms, that's going to represent a tremendous uptick in costs for content moderation, and is also going to drive a lot of voices off of those platforms, which is going to lessen the opportunity to develop revenue from advertising.
Some have suggested that some of these companies have been overvalued anyway. Is this a buying opportunity for investors? Would you buy now?
I would not buy right now, but I'm a naturally cautious person. Look, without question, the core value proposition of social media companies, which is prying deeper and deeper into people's lives and turning that intelligence into actionable data, that's not going anywhere. That's the future of media. That's the future of technology. And the value of that long term is much, much greater than what the market reflects right now. But before we get there, there are a lot of questions that have to be answered, and there's going to be a lot of shakeout in the marketplace.
Are all tech companies being impacted, or are these just social media companies like Facebook and Twitter? And also, what does this do for smaller, more aspirational companies?
Those are two great questions. First question, more diversified companies like Alphabet and Amazon, which don't really rely on social media advertising revenue as a core element of their business model, they're doing just fine. It's really Twitter and companies like that are seeing the big drops right now because Twitter really doesn't have a plan B in terms of raising revenue. Your question about startups is great. I think that the higher the duty of care, the more investment that a tech company is going to have to make in preventing its users from sharing hateful and inciting speech, I think the less competitive the space is going to be because the amount of capital you need to reach critical mass is going to be greater.
You said that it depends on what happens post-inauguration. So what do you predict will happen under a Biden administration and Democratic control, and what do you expect stock prices to do?
I predict that there are a number of different regulatory levers that can be pulled. I think antitrust is probably the one that's got the most juice right now, breaking up certain elements of big tech, tearing Instagram and WhatsApp away from Facebook, maybe coming down a little harder on Google to divest of some of its advertising infrastructure. It's really difficult to know. I think the sooner we have a clear picture of what the regulatory landscape is going to look like, the sooner we'll see people doubling down on investing in the companies that look good long term because they actually have the capital to build a better platform, and they've got the diversity within their portfolios to weather a downtick in one element while still building on another.
One thing for sure, no one in Washington is now talking about WeChat and TikTok. Aram Sinreich, thank you so much for joining us from American University.